Are we in trouble yet? Folks, y'all, we're going to start a survey. Are we in trouble yet?
Yep.
You got to laugh about it, but yeah.
In certain areas, I believe we are.
Certain areas is very,
Yeah.
what we need, actually.
Probably at a
the,
fairly high level.
the short list would be the areas we're not in trouble at.
Well, and I eliminated one of them today.
Well, yeah, but wait, we got to make sure. It's like a guy at the gun show when he asked me, "How's it going?" I said, "Better than the government." He said, "What's wrong with the government?" I said, "It'd take a lot less time if you tell me
That's
what's
a good
right
reaction.
with it." Yeah,
That's
what's right with the
Hardwell.
government?
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, we didn't. I didn't bother to. It was up to. He walked away. He didn't. He didn't hang around.
Well,
he
he
knew
was
that
smart.
was a losing fight. All right,
Prayer.
we're back. What?
Prayer.
Well, yes. We're back, Freedom Forum, on this, the 18th day already of the 11th month of the year of our Lord Jesus the Christ. Jesus the Christ, the
Amen.
Son of our Heavenly Father Jehovah, the only one up there, and that other one is not. He's a demon. Passion of Christ, strengthen us. Strengthen us under the pressure of temptation. Strengthen us when principle is at stake. Strengthen us to do your will, dear Lord. Strengthen us in moments of suffering, in times of loneliness, in periods of depression. Strengthen us that we may never swerve from you, dear Lord, nor weaken through human respect, through a desire to be popular, or through hope of social distinction. Strengthen us to accept our cross and carry it generously to the end. On the battlefield of life, stand by us that we may never prove a traitor in the ranks. Stand by us that we may not be dazzled by the glitter and glow of the enemy camp. In Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I want to add something. I thought it was very intriguing on Facebook this Monday. The homily, which is in the Catholic Church, was about Jesus talking about the end of the world. Now, these media people take this and they say the Pope was talking about the end of the world today after the deal in France. Whether the deal happened in France or not, that was going to be the homily for Sunday. I just can't believe how they take stuff like that and,
If it's dramatic, if they can make drama out of it, understand something about the media if you don't already, folks. The media is populated not by journalists, not even by reporters. At the most, you can call them script readers. Most of the time, they don't even write any script. The editorial writers are a different story. So what you can also add, a term you can use for the controlled, codependent, corporate, corrupt media is drama queens.
oh yeah.
And boy, anyway. Where was I? I lost my train of thought here.
Meetings.
Meetings, that's it. Meetings, tomorrow night. Elise's at 6:30. Elise's on Johnson Street. We'll be discussing the unfortunate incident from a tactical and practical point of view in great depth, tomorrow night. And there will be no show next week. Turns out, and I can't think of if they've done this before, but I'm not displeased by this. Actually happy about it. I don't have to be, y'all don't have to see my ugly face next week.
They weren't going to see mine.
And we weren't going to see him anyway, so we'll not be here next week. They're closing up shop early next Wednesday. And then you'll see us back a week from Wednesday.
It'll be December.
Is that December already by then? I guess it is.
That's right.
It'll
Good
be
Lord
December.
willing, and good Lord willing,
Ho, ho,
and
ho.
ISIS doesn't strike. And then Jimbo's got a long distance, actually it's not that long away,
No.
it's just another week.
It's a couple of weeks. The Sonic Christmas Parade on Sunday, December 6th. Military veterans will lead the parade. I've done this 3 out of 4 years. It's pretty cool. The parade begins at 1 p.m. in downtown Lafayette and ends in the Oil Center. Veterans will assemble at noon at the corner of Jefferson and Vine Street downtown. Now, if you prefer to park in the LGMC parking lot in the Oil Center, that's right behind Burton Reel building, in that where all the doctor's offices are. There's a parking lot right there. The parade ends at that point. Shuttle buses will bring you to the start location at the corner of Vine and Jefferson. There's some things here. All pre-approved parade vehicles should arrive no later than 11. Transportation will be available for those veterans who want to ride in the parade. We have different things set up for the people that want to, and I'm still able to walk. Please arrive in uniform with your group. I don't have a uniform. But anyways, that's on December 6th, and it's well worth it. As a veteran, walking the streets, the people are awesome. We usually hand out little flags. Have you ever done it, Joe?
I've never done
Really?
Yep.
I'm gonna have to drive by his house and drag his butt
it. I'll
down there.
explain later.
Huh?
I asked if they have a porta potty around.
Anyways, that's December 6th, whether,
You know what I forgot? Would you grab him if you can find him? I forgot about Ustream tonight. Ustream was not on the first hour.
he said it was
Oh,
on.
he said it was in? Oh, never
He
mind.
already said it was on.
Okay, because it wasn't on the
You
first
must
hour
have had your hearing aid
last
off
week.
or something.
Hey, never mind.
What?
Which year was it he said it in, first of all? That's
I know what
important.
it was. Climate change caused that.
That's right. Well, climate change is causing everything now. After all, climate change caused ISIS to do what it did
It
Friday
caused-
night in
It
Paris.
also causes people to become prostitutes, so.
It causes prostitution.
You didn't see
I wonder
that
if there's a
one?
connection between goats and ISIS and
I
climate change.
don't know about the goats.
All right.
We'll have to call John. John, call and tell us about the goats.
No, don't do that. Never
No,
mind,
don't
never
do
mind.
that, don't do that.
Okay,
Okay, down to serious business.
is that all we got for it? Let's get this out, all we got. All right, first thing first tonight. The most important aspect of what occurred Friday needs to be reiterated. And I thought this immediately upon hearing what had happened Friday. And I have been joined since then by several august folks in the media, in the good media, who are actually thinking for themselves and not being told what to do by the New York Times and the White House. And they have come up with the same conclusion that, in fact, what's his name now? Stein. What's his first name? The real good. He's real intelligent. Has written some books. Was an actor.
Mark?
No, I can't think of it now. But he's on Fox once in a while.
Mark Stein.
But he said he and his wife summer in Nebraska, and he said if what had happened in Paris had occurred there while he and his wife were in a movie theater, for example, the guys up on the balcony would have gotten one shot off before they were answered by appropriate return fire in Nebraska. Understand what happened Friday night is critical. And of course, we got a little aside to that movie theater here is reopening, and it's reopening as a gun-free zone.
Unbelievable.
So
Just don't learn lessons.
we are going to advocate that you do not go to that theater and you let them know why you're not going. It's going to be dangerous there, and I won't go into that. It might give somebody ideas, but not a good idea to go in there.
I gotta ask this. If they caught me in there with a gun, what would happen?
Well, they could, if there was a cop that might be, well, no, if you've got a concealed carry permit, they just ask you to leave. If you don't have a concealed carry permit, they might get more upset. But the bottom line is, again, it's their right to do. It's not right to do it, but they have the right as the landowner or the land custodian. Well, they're not actually the landowner. Whoever claims to own the land is not the real landowner either. The government is. But they have the right as the custodian, anyway, to ban firearms in that theater.
But who do you
That
think?
doesn't mean you have to go.
Who do you think made this decision?
Well, probably corporate at the highest, possibly. Although what we've heard, the other one is did not follow suit from the beginning. And
Broussard.
it's owned by the same people.
And
No,
Broussard,
Broussard definitely doesn't mind. It's the other one on Cully's Saloon. Is not
Is that gun free?
No, from what we've been told. So again, find out. But the theater in Broussard definitely is not a gun-free zone. The entire nation of France is a gun-free zone. In fact, I forgot to bring some training aids for you tonight, but we'll have them tomorrow night. Even the police are poorly armed over there, and sometimes unarmed. The first
Kind of like England.
the English police carry weapons now, pretty much universally. Even the bobbies on the beat carry them under their jackets like they used to do centuries before.
What about the guys guarding the Queen?
The guys guarding the Queen probably have an arsenal equivalent to a light infantry battalion every time they go out with the Queenie, just like they do with Queenie Barack. And what they did in that parade, that recent parade that where people were protesting him, they made sure that the last vehicle in the parade had their gun prominently displayed, their minigun out of the roof.
That's the one that comes out the roof.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, hey, the
It's like the one at my house that comes out the roof.
you only have one.
Well, I can't give away everything.
The Charlie Hebdo attack, the cartoonist attack earlier this year, or was that last year? Has it already been? No, it hadn't been that long. It was this year, huh?
Yes.
Where they killed the publisher and they killed his bodyguard, who was a police officer, an unarmed police
That was
officer.
last year.
Last year, it was already. Okay. The office had been attacked already. And yet the bodyguard for the publisher, a police officer, was unarmed. Well, when you look at the video of what happened Friday night, especially the video that night, since then somebody gave them a flea market deal on some long guns, because a whole lot more police since then in Paris streets have been toting submachine guns and rifles, but not all of them. They have been woefully ill prepared for what happened. And we just got information, don't have it yet confirmed, that the raid that they just did today in that suburb a mile from the, was it the stadium? The stadium where the bombings occurred, that raid was not led by the French super SWAT team, the GIGN. It was instead led by the Germans, and the French stood perimeter duty, let the Germans handle it for them. That would be Germany's GSG 9, which is a branch of their border guard service. That's just the one they decided to put it in. It's got really nothing to do with the border guards, but they're quite good as, well, they're equivalent of our Delta Force for that kind of thing. But the French response was pretty good. And while we're talking about that, I'll mention what somebody said the next day that was kind of incongruous, but later on it was proven out that she was correct. One of the reporterettes one of the script readers on one of the news programs, when they were announcing the targets that the French Air Force hit in Syria as being training camps, ammo dumps, and communications and command centers, she got incredulous that these targets weren't hit before this week. And the other people on the panel were trying to cover up for her basic lack of any kind of military credibility by dancing around the subject. But first off, these targets are not static. You don't have a target that sits there, kill me, bomb me, destroy me for a week or so, for one thing, especially command and control. They've changed locations, for one thing. So the probability is that certain of these targets were not targets before the French hit them, or not too long before the French hit them. And then you have to ask yourself, why didn't the U.S. Airstrikes hit? Well, the U.S. airstrikes have kind of tapered off, and so have all of these other so-called coalition airstrikes. The Jordanians have pretty much stepped out of the picture again, etc. They satisfied their bloodlust with the targeting that they did after their pilot was burned to death. It has come out since then that the reason that a lot of these targets were not hit is that the rules of engagement set out by the administration in Washington, in other words, micromanaging the military, which was the major cause for what happened in Vietnam to have happened. Aside from the political or the moral aspects of it, micromanaging in Washington is not a good idea in military operations. The thing is that apparently the White House had decreed if there's any chance of collateral damage, i.e. civilians becoming casualties from any airstrikes, that they were not to occur. Hence, 60+% of the airstrikes the U.S. Air Force and the Navy launched over the last few months are the sorties. Now understand what a sortie is. A sortie is one aircraft. If they say that there was 10 sorties today against enemy targets, it means 10 aircraft flew one time. A sortie is one aircraft flying one mission. It's not, as they are implying, they're not bothering to tell you this stuff. They're not bothering to point out that 10 sorties means 10 aircraft flying one mission each, or 5 aircraft flying 2 missions each, all right? 10 single aircraft, single mission events is a sortie. Well, the sorties have resulted in 60% plus of the planes returning with their bombs still under their wings, because for whatever reason, when they pinpointed the target, they saw there were civilians too close. Apparently is one of the major reasons for this occurring. Of course, one of the other major reasons for this occurring, especially with regard to ISIS, is when they got there, the target was gone. There wasn't any target there. And they couldn't be sure of the bus or the truck or the car down the road being the target, because it's not where they were told it was going to be. And this has been something that's been pointed out by some folks lately in regard to everything going on now, is that the U.S. military has been too afraid of being second-guessed by lawyers when they do anything. And, of course, this is a bad situation, but this is an effort to control an otherwise immoral war, to keep some kind of political control where they can always say, well, we had a lawyer on the ground and he said not to do it and they did it anyway, or it's his fault because he said do it when they did it. That It's a political pass the buck maneuver. And understand this, and I know this for a fact because it is, while not publicized a lot, I know somebody that was in both Afghanistan and Iraq doing this. Units down to a very small level have lawyers embedded with them, that everything they do of a major pull the trigger type sense is overseen by a lawyer. Okay? And of course, that's no way to run a war either, unless you're afraid of being called a war criminal. And that's what a lot of the pundits have said is the reason for the probability that if Obama were to say, y'all go ahead and attack, y'all do what you want, military, we're going to quit micromanaging you, that even then there would be a problem. Is that rain?
I don't think so.
Huh, they got the air conditioner on,
Hey,
I guess.
it's a good thing that they didn't have that in Vietnam.
Well, they could, they had not fine-tuned the micromanagement of war to that extent. Okay, Vietnam was the major reason, though, that happened. They didn't want, they didn't want.
Something else we caused.
Yeah,
right?
it's all your fault.
It's
Okay.
all our fault.
And
Drugs. Alcohol.
The drugs, the alcohol. Well, no, alcohol has always been the drug of choice of the U.S. military since the days that Ulysses S. Grant issued orders the morning after a roaring drunk.
Actually, it was. No, I better not go there. High school.
Oh, in high school? Ulysses Grant in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
We studied him often.
But the latest example of this whole mess, they apparently are starting to decide to take the gloves off. And I saw an interesting video on
French
YouTube.
did.
Well, wait. I saw an interesting video on YouTube done by an American where he's on the ground in Syria, and he's on a bluff overlooking a major highway. And he said constantly there are ISIS supply trucks, especially oil tankers, down this road, and nobody molests them, nobody attacks them. Well, this week there was an interesting raid, and it was the direct result of what happened in France, where, oh, let me find it here. I'm going to have to come back to this page, doggone it. The military attacked, here it is, or the air forces attacked an oil tanker convoy.
Ooh.
And this truck convoy, or these trucks, all 400 of them belong to ISIS. And ISIS has been, ISIS has been using these trucks to
Well, that's how they're making
ferry
money.
their $1 million a day that they're making off of oil that they're stealing, of course, out of the wells and the tanks of the Syrian and the Iraqi people, and going who knows where. Actually, we do know where. It's going to Turkey, it's going to Jordan, to either middlemen or to government people who are then turning around, well, they're middlemen, government or private, let's put it like that. They're then turning around and shipping it out through other means, either pipeline from Jordan or by sea from Turkey, and probably by pipeline also. And this is being willingly bought by a bunch of countries. They mentioned how many, and our estimates are that there's quite a few countries that are buying ISIS oil.
And
And of course, it's cheap. It's cheaper than the cheap going rate right now for the world crude price. ISIS is selling it cheaper. And one guy estimates they're making $2 million a day off the oil. Somebody else gave a figure of how much they've got in their war chest, and it is in the billions of dollars. Remember, they looted every town's banks that they conquered. And see, ISIS is a new ballgame. They have been taking on more and more of the trappings of a formal government. And the refugee thing has been causing them trouble from one standpoint in that it's a brain drain. People are leaving occupied areas, ISIS-occupied areas, because of fear of various things happening to them, but also because they don't want to work for ISIS. They don't want to make the money through the immorality that ISIS is making them perpetrate. And there are also technicians, etc., that are leaving, and ISIS is upset by that. But back to the truck convoy. The U.S. Air Force with A-10s and AC-130 gunships whacked the convoy 2 nights ago.
They
And
get them all?
they destroyed 100 of the trucks. The reason they only destroyed 100 of them is because, now this wasn't a convoy as such, apparently. They weren't all on the road, but some of them were on the road full of oil. Others were parked ready to fill up and go. The reason they only destroyed 100 of the 400 is they ran out of ammo. And I find that quite interesting because the A-10s, while they can carry a big load, it's mostly for knocking out tanks. And the 30 millimeter nose gun on an A-10 is kind of overkill for an oil tanker. And the only other thing they got that's really useful for knocking out oil trucks, which kind of burn easily, is unguided rockets. And hopefully they weren't using Hellfire missiles on an oil tanker, because they cost big bucks. Well, the AC-130s, on the other hand, carry lots of ordnance on board. So to imagine that, well, I don't know how many there were, though. See, that's the problem, too. We don't know how many A-10s and AC-130s. But they ran out of ammo after destroying about 100 of the trucks. Now, we don't know if they went back or not. There's been no report. They should have gone back and finished them off, or as many as they could, after reloading, as it were. But that's the kind of situation down there. And you ask yourself, why wasn't the truck convoy or the truck park hit before? That's because the rules of engagement were such that if any civilians might be killed, i.e. truck drivers, then don't hit them. And
In my eyes, if they drive in that truck for ISIS,
well,
they military.
again, the warped rules of engagement that they're using. If you're gonna deploy a military force, then you don't micromanage them like this unless they're involved in something other than or less than lethal encounters. But this is definitely not less than lethal. And even then, if you're going to use military for less than lethal stuff, then why are you using military at
Why
all?
are you there?
Why aren't you using doctors and policemen?
Yeah.
So it's a situation that should not exist. ISIS should have been handled years ago, and the U.S. did not need to get involved. So again, Obama wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
He
is the
supplied
bottom
them.
line. And of course he was told to do it this way.
He supplied them.
Well, ISIS originally was part of Al-Qaeda. They're kind of like the neocons in the Republican Party. The Democrats got to be too horsey when it came to Israel, so the neocons broke away and took over the Republican Party and became just a Democratic Party light. And ISIS, on the other hand, didn't like it. Al-Qaeda was a little too forgiving, wasn't bloodthirsty enough. So, and of course, Al-Qaeda was started by the CIA. So, the root cause of all this is U.S. interference, the bottom line.
There's no doubt. And you look at the history of the whole Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
nobody solved that problem
That's why we shouldn't be there.
ever.
They understand about the refugees. Again, the Turks are not keeping them. they're shipping them out as fast as they can get
Saudi
a means to
Arabia.
get them out of there. Saudi Arabia is not taking any at all, and they have, estimates are in excess of 1 million
Well, they showed the picture of that tent city.
refugee camps sitting there empty, air-conditioned tents, and they're not taking any of these people.
But-
None.
But you should see, Americans should be asking themselves, why
Some of them are.
not?
Some of them are.
Not enough.
I know. And these clowns that come off with these highfalutin ideas about how to take care of this with a no-fly zone, we'll come back to that. With a buffer zone at the Turkish-Syrian border where these people can then go, and no military is allowed in there, no military aircraft over it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's bogus too, because ISIS will put their own people into these camps,
Exactly.
and there'll be all kinds of trouble. You want to know what kind of trouble? Well, go back in history and look at what happened in the German the POW camps that the U.S. set up for German troops, and see the kind of trouble they had with the Nazis that were in these camps. They did not segregate them properly like they should have, and it would have been easy to do, for one thing, but they didn't do it. As a result, a lot of these POWs that were not dyed-in-the-wool Nazis, because they wouldn't do what they were told, they figured they didn't have to, they wound up getting killed in the middle of the night, and the U.S. authorities doing nothing about it.
See, I
So-
like what Obama said, they were contained.
Well, they were. He was right. Y'all got to understand about this. It's all got to be put into the overall big picture, you see. ISIS is contained on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Understand that ISIS is contained. He was right. On the planet Earth. We have not seen any indicator that ISIS has made it to the moon, Mars, or Venus yet.
Exactly.
So he was right.
But I like what
He
a
didn't say where they were
I like what a
contained.
person replied to that for. So if they're contained, then why are the refugees leaving Syria? If they're under control. So why are the refugees?
Well,
Why don't they just
what I
go
like
back and reset
What I
it?
like what Hillary said about them. You got to have empathy for your enemies.
Sure.
Really? Kind of like the dimwit that said if we take the weapons and somebody goes to rob you and they know that you
Yeah,
don't have a gun.
Right, that you're gonna empathize. They'll
They'll
empathize with you.
empathize with you and lay down their weapon
and they
and
won't
say, "I'm sorry."
They won't harm you because you're no threat to them.
Who was that? That was,
Oh, it was Pelosi or one of those clowns said that.
yeah, the other one that's drinking a lot of cheap
Well-
wine in California.
And then you got Kerry,
Oh,
the
God.
so-called Secretary of State.
He really got slapped today.
What he said originally was that the Charlie Hebdo attack was understandable given the situation at the time and what they were trying to accomplish and why they did it and this stuff. But then he tried to backtrack on that. Now, it's no more understandable than what happened in Paris Friday night. The Charlie Hebdo attack was a bloodthirsty, totally off-the-wall, satanic attack on people that were not doing anything but exercising their free speech. Okay, under the auspices of the not-so-free French government. Well, under their watchful eye, anyway.
Oh, it's,
The situation in the Paris attacks with 148 dead,
no, it's
Over-
132.
132 dead, and
The
over
numbers changed.
over
but-
300 wounded, many of them seriously, and they may yet die. 400, okay. This is no more understandable than what they did on a smaller scale and had an excuse, i.e. these people made cartoons that drew cartoons that made fun of Mohammed. What, that's what we got to understand? Well, yeah, we can understand why they did both of them, okay, in the same vein. It doesn't mean you approve of it, but that's not what he was getting at.
Well,
An intelligent man understands but doesn't necessarily agree.
Well,
with things.
here's the
And
thing.
that's what where we are now with this.
We-
But it definitely not empathize with them.
No,
Empathizing means you have sympathy for them.
really.
It's a variation of sympathy.
Oh,
And I have no sympathy for those people, all right?
it's like, if they don't like our culture, why do they come here?
Well,
To destroy us.
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. They come here to destroy our culture, is what a lot of them are here
Phone
for.
rang and woke me up. Go ahead, caller.
These refugees they want to send from Syria,
You
do
mean,
they know how to use a toilet?
do what now?
Do they know how to use a toilet?
Oh, okay.
You understand that
What
statement?
would they think toilet paper was for?
Well, they invented them. You gotta understand. Okay? They're like some other people who have a warped idea of their own history. They seem to forget convenient parts of their history, and then you have to ask yourself what happened to them. Okay? Understand that the only reason that those countries on the Persian Gulf, on both sides of the Persian Gulf, are at the level that they are economically, socially, etc., is because of oil money
Yeah, that we set up.
that was set up by the West. They wouldn't have their oil wells. They wouldn't have their high-rise buildings and all that stuff if it were not for Westerners, for infidels. Okay.
Yeah, I like that word.
The
Infidel.
this notion that we invented this and we invented that and we were the first ones to use this and that. In the case of the Mohammedans, the stuff they're claiming is kind of like that saying. It's supposedly an old Arabic saying, but it's not. Okay? It, like much of their so-called scientific and advances, came from China. They didn't think of it themselves. It came from China. The statement that I'm talking about is revenge is a dish best served cold. Everybody thinks that's Arabic. No, that's not. That's Chinese. If anybody has a claim to all of these advances in mathematics, etc., it's the Chinese. Now, you got to ask yourself, what happened to the Chinese? How come they have just in the late 20th century pulled themselves up out of what amounted to the Stone Age? Again, it was because of their own cultural proclivities for despotism and tyranny that allowed things like Genghis Khan to come in there and other influences like Mao Zedong's communism, and before him the warlordism of the Kuomintang. So let's look at history, people. Let's look at the history of these people. They've pulled themselves up by the bootstraps in some cases, by themselves, the Chinese, virtually. They had some help from the West, but they rejected most of the Western traditions and all back in the middle to the end of the 19th century and then into the 20th century when they degraded into a warlord society, and Mao Zedong was nothing but a warlord. If he had not been supported by the Russians, he would have gone by the wayside also. So let's put this in the proper historical perspective. Okay, what the Arabs gained from the Chinese, they lost in the subsequent Mohammedan conquering of these lands that were Christian, and our Heavenly Father punished them for that. Those that they were not driven out of became nothing but a bunch of goat and camel herders, lorded over by a few people that wore silk and had harems of 20, 30 women. And so, again, don't throw that history crap in our faces, because the Westerners, the Christian countries, are the only ones that have been consistently improving themselves on their own. We didn't have any help from these other people. in these other continents. Period. So your notion that do they know how to use a toilet? Well, that's a good question. Okay, most of them
Well,
are.
let me tell you, you've seen the lines on TV of these refugees. You don't see any toilets. You don't see any showers. It must really smell good. Can you imagine them guys coming over here with these high-class women, with their perfume?
Well, this is one reason. This is one reason that Mohammedans ridicule that. Okay, they claim that, well, it's immoral for women to wear jewelry, to wear perfume, et cetera, et cetera. Yet, when they have the opportunity, then they denigrate themselves to the Western niceties, the Western luxuries. Why is, ask yourself that. Have you seen Christians willingly become goat herders? Yeah, there's been some, because they somehow think that now with the social media going on, these people that are becoming Mohammedans voluntarily in this country and a few other Western countries, they're severely deluded, and they would have done something had this not come along. They would have killed their parents. They would have denigrated into a life of debauchery or something evil. Anyway, so they're prone to it just by the way they were brought up, drugs they're using, mental deficiencies, whatever. And I know I'm being extremely politically correct with this discussion tonight.
Politically.
But guess what? I can say it because I don't owe allegiance to any man. Any man.
And you have no screen.
And what?
You don't have a teleprompter.
No, I don't have a teleprompter. I'm speaking from the heart.
Well, maybe we
And the
can
brain.
take a few of the refugees and send one African back to Africa.
Uh-oh.
Well, that was Lincoln's idea. Lincoln wanted to do that, and if he had not been assassinated, in fact, a lot of people think that's one of the reasons he was assassinated, is because he was going to take their rather large labor force away from them. Ooh.
Cheap
Ooh,
labor force.
Who are we talking about now? We're talking about the Yankee industrialists who wanted the Negro slaves to stay on the plantations that they were taking over during Reconstruction. They needed the workers, and they kept them. They kept them, and they were under virtual slavery for a long time after the so-called end of slavery. Oh, they got paid. Well, yes, so did the indentured servants that were working from long before that, coming out of Europe. There were a lot more Irish indentured servants than there were Negro slaves in this country. Nobody talks about them.
Well, I didn't mean the Negro slaves. I meant the one half-breed Negro that we have in the White House. We'll send him back. We'd take a few of the refugees.
Well, actually, there's a possibility that his daddy was not who they say he was anyway, so he has no ties to Kenya. But have you heard about the other
We don't have any
situation?
ties to here either.
No.
Social Security number from Connecticut.
Well,
Really?
again, we can overlook that little thing. We've overlooked so much else.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that his mother found in Hawaii.
Yeah, his mother was working for the Social Security office.
Makes
in
sense
Hawaii.
to me. I mean,
Yep. Oh well. Okay.
look at my Social Security number, you'll know where I'm from.
Yep.
Well, thank you, sir.
Hang in there. You there?
You went.
You going? Okay.
You went away.
He went. All right.
I find it intriguing. We were talking about it beforehand, how I learned about the history of this, the history of where this group came from. And it all started when we were studying the Constitution and finding out how the different articles in the history of the world and what the different kings did is how we created the Constitution. Ignore. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Tom, this is Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
Hey, I want to talk about gun-free zones. Picture this scenario. There is a restaurant owner who says, this is a gun-free zone. And Obama and his gang want to come and eat there. And the owner says, okay, you can come, but no one of your Secret Service can enter if they've got guns. What do you think Obama and the media would do and say? Huh? Think about that.
Well, that's a very interesting conundrum for the Secret Service. Because if Obama tells them that they can't go in with him, which the property owner is perfectly justified in doing that.
No matter what level of law enforcement.
Right. It doesn't matter whether it's Obama's Secret Service detail, but nobody would do that. That's the problem.
I know that.
Nobody in this country, especially somebody that's going to have a gun-free zone, they're not even going to think about that. They're going to be so honored and privileged that the big man himself is going to be visiting their establishment, that it won't even occur to them. And
Well, it's just something I thought about.
Do what?
It's just something, a wild-haired idea that I had.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is that someone said if he wants to take the weapons, we need to start at the White House first.
Yeah.
Make it a gun-free zone.
Yeah.
Okay, fellas. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Take care of that cough, Jerry.
Cigarette.
Jerry brings up a good point.
It is
And-
an interesting point.
You can carry this out into several aspects too. When you've got them visiting a school, all schools are gun-free zones, aren't they? But do the Secret Service give up theirs when they go into a school? Well, no. You might have a 7-year-old try and jump him with a ballpoint pen. But it's like,
Actually, that is more dangerous than a gun.
well, it can be.
Huh?
Or a Pop-Tart, yeah, he might bite a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun and hold them all up with it, yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
you chewed it to make it look like a gun.
But that reminds me of what Obama said today in his ridicule of
Oh,
the Republicans because they wanted to restrict the Syrians coming in. He said, are they scared of widows and little children?
oh, that's our
That's
boy
Big John. Go ahead, grab it.
Hello?
Hey, Jim, Tom.
Yo,
Jim, you just said that they wanted to pick up the guns. They can't find what they think is 11 million illegal aliens. How are they going to pick up 350,000 guns or so?
350 million.
Whatever.
well, you got a good point, and that brings up this other point that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
The one Syrian refugee that went to Baton Rouge that then promptly left again.
Yeah,
As
you
soon as-
can't find him.
No,
As
they
soon-
found him.
Well, they found him today. The state, but
Wasn't
it was
the FBI that found him?
no, Louisiana State Police found him in another state. Okay,
Uh-huh.
the word was he was going to go visit some relatives in Washington D.C. area, so he disappeared. He disappeared without telling anybody where he was going.
Does his relative live in the White House?
Well, but see that brings up that point that there's also a fairly large number of firearms stolen out of an arsenal in,
Yeah,
in
I read something
Massachusetts.
about that today. They got some
Yeah.
M4s and some handguns and
Yeah, and some
Long guns.
some long guns, and they ain't telling you what all kind of long guns they got.
No, and
Could be sniper.
yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah, normally.
I wonder if they took the bolts and the firing pins out of them.
Well, I had wondered that back in 67, 68 time frame. They took our firing pins out of our M14s, and they were doing that all over the country because there were several
Really?
arsenals
Really?
that got raided. That got the weapons were
Yeah.
stolen. So they went around to all of the armories, all National Guard, everybody's armories, and they took their firing pins out of their rifles, out of their
Yeah,
weapons.
no good then. Got a club.
Well, my firing
Well-
pin was in the one in Vietnam.
Well, we weren't in a combat zone, so. But yeah, our rifles had no firing pins, and then when we had to to do any training in the summer, they had to come back and get an armorer to put the firing pins back in their rifles, which wasn't that often. We didn't.
Yeah, we keep talking about you all the time and goat herders.
Yeah, I know that, but I just got one goat, man. And I'm looking for me another one there.
Well, then, okay, I guess a herd is more than one. So
More
when
than
you-
one.
I'm starting off slow, you know.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah. I gotta find a friend, you know, 'cause
Right, right.
every time I go to feed the chicken, she's on top of the cans.
This is a family show.
Oh yeah, well, that's a goat thing, you know. I'll see y'all tomorrow night, fellas.
All right.
All right, buddy.
There you
Later. Bye.
He sounded tired. John, get some sleep. I know he's been burning both ends helping a friend of ours out of town
Take
with
care.
their place while they're in the hospital in Houston.
Are they still down there?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He has to go every day to take care of their animals and the yard, etc. All right. While we're on the state police,
Oh.
we're going to change the topic a little bit. We're going to come back to the refugees and all, and some aspects to this.
That's all.
Later, but oh yeah, I finally quit reading articles about that today. And yesterday too. I would just people that would send out these daily 8 or 10 article links, and
Oh.
every one of them would be on what's going on, some relation to this.
Yeah, I did the same thing today. It's like I can't.
But
No more.
state police had to go get that guy, that Syrian refugee, singular. The only one that's been sent to Louisiana so far in
He
this
checked
batch of
in. My
Syria.
understanding is he checked in
Yeah.
and then disappeared.
Yeah, he didn't check out, he just disappeared. And
He
they
just
wonder what the heck
disappeared.
happened to him.
But it's not the responsibility of Catholic Services to track him.
No, that's not,
It's not their responsibility. My question is, who is?
well, that's coming up. That's a question that's being asked by a lot of people right now. But while we're on the state police, we gotta get this out. A certain gubernatorial candidate, Edwards specifically, has been endorsed by State Troopers Association, and that's illegal. Well, unfortunately, this just hit, and the election
have
is
the-
Saturday. So,
Do you have the
what's that?
printout?
This right here.
In the Sheriff's Association.
Oh no, wait a minute.
No, what'd you do with it?
Which one?
The,
No, I didn't have the actual article.
no,
It's definitely a
you know what
no-no.
I'm looking for. You have it over there somewhere.
We got the refugee one.
Uh,
That's illegal, what they're doing,
The 14, Article 14. There's an article, you have to have it.
no,
Unless I
it's
stuck it in here
in here.
somewhere.
It's in here.
No,
It's part of this one?
no. It's a
all I have.
separate piece of paper.
No. There's Article 14 there, prohibited
Here
political
it is.
activity.
You don't have it. This is, see, they endorsed it, and then there's Louisiana State Police Commission, Chapter 14. Prohibited political activities. And we can go through all these, but the biggest thing is, they can't endorse candidates. Plain and simple. So today, I called the Civil Service Office and told them why I wanted to call, and I left a message with the person that's supposed to call me back. This is really something the media should have took a hold of.
If they bothered to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a serious, and the story is, I don't know how much we want to tell, but the story is that Edmondson, the head of the deal, is the one that made the final decision, and they don't even know if he polled the whole membership. Which in any way you look at it,
Regardless, it was illegal.
it's illegal. I mean, what I like is there's 20 chapters. But chapter 14 is the one that says required or prohibited activities. And I mean, I knew all this
Yeah.
from the stuff
see-
I've been doing all these years. But I mean, they went ahead and did this. Why?
Right.
What my question is why would they do something this stupid in the public?
And they did it that close to the election.
You know,
The election's only 3 days away.
somebody trying to keep their job?
Well, here's the problem. It doesn't matter because they're civil service. That's why they can't endorse candidates.
Exactly.
And somebody else we know is just retired from the state, not state police, another state law enforcement agency. He couldn't do this kind of stuff,
Again now.
but he can now. The bottom line is that this was illegal to begin with, and this needs to be,
I'm not
Dealt with.
I'm not gonna stop. If they don't call me by lunch tomorrow, I'm gonna call them again.
yep.
And I'm gonna let them know I'm
Okay.
not happy.
When we come back, we'll have some more on the refugee crisis, and it is a crisis, folks. This is getting out of hand, and the administration